Chapter 4. The wind was in the east, and the town was dark with dust. Above the bleeding strip of asphalt along the middle of the road, the heat danced like shimmering glass. Barbie stepped out of the public works truck and stood on the curb. The driver, all white teeth and a beard, said he didn't see any eggs on the footpath, though that was the place to fry them, eh? Barbie said hooroo and looked around. Tambourine was a town where the main street went around the corner. It was one of the few towns, they said, that was bent in the middle, and it was a joke that the man who laid it out was a crazy carpenter gone mad with the L rule, the road from curb to curb, except for the asphalt center was dirt. The street lights had flat pancake shades. It had age and benignity. The buildings had all been boys and girls together, and only a few of them even now leaned on crooked veranda posts. There was a wheelwright, and a blacksmith and gentleman smith put dog bowls of water at the entrance to his clothing store every day. Barbie strolled idly down the street, the music of a merry go round in her ears, on a vacant allotment between the Greek cafe and the baker's shop. The fair was in full swing, a striped tent with a chimpanzee clown on the inside, a shooting gallery, a hoop-la stand, a dart board, and the green and yellow merry-go-round. People moved about chewing and gawking. Children squealed and whined, tethered to hot mothers who felt like whining. A ferrety man with a little table, 3 half-walnut shells and a pea, was droning in a high-burling hum of rapid syllables from the midst of a knot of people. Now we have here the little pea. Now we have here the 3 shells. Now we take the little pea, and we put the little pea under one of the shells. Now we move the shells around, firster this way, then that-a-way. Now there we have the 3 shells. Now can anybody tell me where the little pea is? Another man was bawling, "Come on, 4 shots for a shilling, on the knock-em, win your girl a lovely box of chalks." Through Barbie thought she heard a voice she knew. She pushed through the crowd, trying to see over their heads. Then she stopped on the outskirts of a group of people and grinned. A man with foam at his lips from talking in the heat was standing on the back of a truck, with people around him. He was holding a blue-tongued lizard in the left hand and a bottle of some medicine in the right. He was saying that one came from the other, and there was nothing like it for curing ailments of the hip, the back, and the chest, like as in the case of sciatica, rheumatics, lumbago, stiff joints, and wrenched muscles. This man's name was Teddy Campasp, better known as the Lovely Brusher. He went around selling stuff for the hair, the heart, the liver, and lungs, when he wasn't selling it for the bones, the nerves, and the muscles. Barbie had seen him in a score of places, and he was never any different from what he was now, always in a silk shirt, stained with sweat and catching to his flesh, golden armbands, a rainbowy tie loosened at the neck, and a gray hat with a parakeet feather in the band, always pushed back on his head so the sweaty hair, the color of gingerbread, bunched out like a pom-pom on his purple forehead. Barbie, playing along, went up and bought a bottle, and he said, for Grandma, "She's the sensible little lady, she knows," and he gave her a great big wink of recognition and thanks. Others followed to buy. Barbie waited around. When the lovely brusher had run out of customers for that session, he put his lizard in its box and sprang off the truck. "Barbie, you little beaut, what little fairy brought you along? Stooge for me, sweetheart, 10%, and your food, how are you? Hullo, brusher, give us a kiss for old time's sake." He pecked her on the cheek. "Ha, that's better. Gord, I can hardly talk. I'm that dry. How about a gargle? Down to the pub, come on. No hard stuff, no. Good on you, good on you. You'll never grow scrambled and loose. Over here then. Gord, it's like a fire, ain't it? Take more than a mob of fire brigades to put this one out. Old lordy up there'll have to get his nose out of that good book soon. Gord, it's great to see ya." They stood at the soft drink stall and had a lemonade. Brusher pulled faces with every sip. "My old woman used to have fits when she gargled lemonade. I take after her. Made her pea green. Me too. Gord, where's your old Papa Lorum?" Barbie told him. "Gord," he said soberly, "how unlucky can you be? Locked away, he couldn't believe it. Gord, I never thought he'd go like that. He must have been properly stung. One thing it was, the way he always wanted to go," Barbie said. "Quick, he was lucky. You must miss him, kid. I got him still in a way. In another way, he's just a step ahead of me. I'll catch him up one day," she smiled. "There's nothing surer." He grinned at her. "You got a funny way of looking at things." "What's funny about it?" I don't know." "You wouldn't." She tapped his chest warningly. "Time you stop selling that muck to the public, too. Haven't they run you in yet?" "Run me in? What for? I'm doing it legit. Why, I tell you, people, I sell that good oil to come back for more. If I wasn't on the level, you think I could go back to all them places again. Only time I got a roasting was in Chain of Ponds last year. An old goat comes hobbling up to the stand, and Gord, does he give me a pasting. 'You so-and-so and up-and-coming so-and-so,' he says. Reckoned the arthritis mixture I sold him nearly killed him. Put him in hospital. Well, no wonder the silly old fool poured it into his gizzard instead of rubbing it on himself, and it says on the bottle, 'Don't drink it,' but he can't read. Now, whose fault was that?" "You'd get away with murder," Barbie chuckled. He pulled a small bottle out of his hip pocket. "Here, you try this on your locks. No kidding, it's miraculous." Barbie took the bottle with a laugh. "You ought to tell me what's in it. That's a professional secret." Brusher questioned her. What was she doing? Where was she going? Who was the lucky man, if any, and how come some people had too much and others not enough? Barbie was laconic. She just said she was going to put in time at Tambourine for a while, but it was enough for Brusher. Shrewdly he tapped her at a loose end, at the mercy of old Mum Nature, didn't have to bob to bless herself with. Weary and hot and hungry, he looked at his gold wrist watch. It's nearly time for constables and all that, I say. He haw-hawed. How about you being my guest at dinner, damsel? Come, let us hie to ye pub, and line the old kidneys. I'll be right, Brusher. Gord, Barbie, I hope a heap of things to talk to you about. We can do it better with our feet under the table and a vase of flowers between us. Come on, matey. Okay, Barbie consented, but won't the Dagos do? The pub's too dear. Barbie, Brusher pointed out with mock haughtiness. Since when have I been staying at the Dagos? The Marquis of Lorne was so old that Colonel Light, the founder of Adelaide, had stayed there, so it was said. It stood on the angle of the L, a red and creamy wooden building, scrolled with woodwork, its balcony supported by a regiment of posts. It had not long been painted, and the outside walls along the street had been recently tiled in cerise for half their height. In the entrance hall stood 2 palm stands on opposite sides of a length of core matting that ran along the floor. At the end of the hall was the office of the proprietor, a kennel with a door cut horizontally through the center, forming 2 half-doors, the lower one with a ledge that formed a desk. To the right of that was the dining room, entered by a fly-screen door. While the lovely Brusher talked and dabbled with a fork at his food, Barbie ate and looked for more. It was cooler in there, if a trifle stuffy. The dimness was from blinds half drawn and the dark tonings. At regular places around the walls hung oil paintings, prints of the masters. What sort of a job are you looking for, Barb? You didn't say. I'm not fussy. Gord, what goes on in this town? Let's see. He laughed. What's biting you now? Lovely, lovely. I was just thinking of Gentleman Smith. Don't go to him. He only puts on boys. He laughed again. Sacks 'em every 5 minutes. I was just thinking of the time he scrawled on the window, Smith wants a boy. Some guy complained, and a copper came along and made Smith go out and wash it off. And of course, now hardly a day goes by without some wag writing Smith wants a boy on the glass. Old gentleman has to turn on the elbow grease every morning, he laughed. Suddenly an idea struck him. He slapped the table. Gord, if I'm not the craziest crow-eater in the business. Barbie, listen. How'd you like to be playing around with dirty dishes? Waitressing, you know. Like these gals here. Be easy. Give you a chance to rest up. Plenty of good food, a decent bed, and a little brew at the weekend. What do you say? Sure, Barbie said, if there's a job going. Well, of course, she'll be right. I'll put in a good word for you with old rosy face. Damn me if I don't go and see him now. Hang on. In 10 minutes he came back through the fly-screen door. He was smiling and rubbing his hands as he approached the table. Ah, lovely, lovely. Barbie, you're on the payroll. You're kidding. He don't want a waitress, but he can give you a start as a housemaid. You know, swinging a feather duster, making the beds, reading the guests' mail. What's the matter? Indigestion? I can't believe it, Brusher. It's just too funny for words. I mean, me coming here to Tambourine and meeting you, well, everything. Ah, lovely, lovely. Brusher chuckled with pleasure. He heard the fly-screen door creak and looked around. Ah, here he comes now. Don't forget to dimple and curtsy. James J. Tweedy, old rosy face, was 5 feet tall and just as wide, so short and fat, in fact, that he was rudely described as being pregnant back and forth. His melon head, stitched with gray hair on each side of a center part, sat like a ball on his shoulders. The skin on his large face was tight and red and glistening, like the peel on a Rome beauty apple, and when he grinned, as he did sometimes, the flesh on his cheekbones bunched into glossy knobs. It was not true to say that he got his complexion from a bottle, for he drank little. His round brown eyes frequently had a dyspeptic look. He worried and moaned, grizzled and groaned, but his heart was as big as himself, and all the town knew of his good works. Humph, he grunted, his stomach ballooning over the table as he scrutinized Barbie. Have to be good or out you go, on your ear. No time for loafers here. Give me more trouble than enough. Barbie felt piqued by the tone. Tweedy looked at her harder. I knew your old man, he said positively. I chucked him out a couple of times. Barbie stood up, flaming-eyed, and no doubt he put some of that on you. She slapped his stomach with the back of her hand. He gave a squeak like a cat. That's my business. Nobody wants to take it away from you, she retorted. Said old rosy face. He waddled on through to the kitchen. Damn him, snorted Barbie. He doesn't know me from a bar of soap, and he didn't know my father either. He never had to be chucked out of anywhere. He's thinking of somebody else. Barbie, Barbie, temper kills in time. Quiet, little one, quiet. He's got a cheek. The lovely Brusher patted her arm placatingly. Look, Barbie, everybody can't have a lovely disposition like you and me. Pears are sweet, lemons are sour, right? We got to all live together, and you don't want to pay much attention to old Rosie. Underneath that vinegar, he's all sugar. Barbie sat down quietly. I don't want to be nasty, she said, not to anyone. The lovely Brusher reached under the chair for his hat. Time I went off and paid for the shirt on my back. Gourd, I haven't sold anywhere near my quota for today yet. My ruddy lizard'll be giving me the sack. They walked out together. In the entrance hall, Barbie put her hand on his arm. Thanks, Brusher. You're a dear. Ah, lovely, lovely, grinned Brusher. A song to my heart, those words. Listen, matey, how about you and me stepping out tomorrow night? There's a good picture on at the Majestic, all about Christians being chucked to the lions. What about it? "It'd be nice," Barbie said. "I can't make it tonight. I'm tied up with a little number down at the fruit shop. Sort of promised her. She's been wooing me with milkshakes and specked fruit. You don't mind, do you? Which is the Christian and which is the lion?" Barbie smiled. "Ah, lovely, lovely," Brusher laughed, and with that he went. Barbie sat on the bed in the little room that had been given to her at the far end of the back veranda. There was a single bed, a wash basin, a wardrobe, a mirror on the wall, a blue calcimined ceiling, a pink linoleum floor, and a window with a spider's web of dead blowflies in one corner. Dust covered everything. "Well," she thought, "I wonder how long this is going to be home. Fancy me a housemaid. Fancy it in the pub at Tambourine, the old Marquis of Lorne. That must make me a bit of history. Fancy hitting the town and running into the lovely Brusher and getting a job out of it all in the one day, all in a few hours, and a terrific dinner, and an invitation to the pictures as well. Life was often like that, though. Things happening as if somebody was pulling strings somewhere. I've got to stay here long enough to make some money," she thought, "get a few quid together so I can move off again. And I've got to think about Ethel Shelton and her husband. Got to see that I write to her twice a week if I can. Something to cheer her up and let her know somebody's sticking to her. Can't send her money and she'll only send it back, but I can send food, flour and spuds and meat." Her thoughts were disturbed by a knock on the door. A narrow-faced girl with a fringe and a wide smile came in and said, "I know who you are. You're Barbie Casaubon, the new maid. I'm Edna Peters, and I work here too, same job as you. Shake." "Sit down," Barbie said. "No, I like standing. Sitting bores me. I came from Udunda, you know," she chuckled. "Udunda, Manunda, Tanunda. We'll have fun in the old band rotunda. That's rhyme. You know it, I suppose. Where do you come from?" "Oh, just anywhere." "Any? Oh gee, I'm silly. I thought for a minute you meant a place called Anywhere." She laughed. "You mean anywhere." She wore a skirt and smock. Her hands were in the hem of the smock, and she kept jerking it up and down. "You got any boyfriends, Barbie?" Barbie shook her head, already taking a liking to this simple girl. "I got two," Edna said. "You can have one." Barbie chuckled. "The one you don't want, I suppose." "Ah, they both a bit on the nose. I'm on the lookout for another one. He'll be my, let's see, 15th since I came here 4 months ago. Not bad going, eh? I don't know what I got that gets 'em." "Oh, you're just modest," Barbie told her. "I left a beauty in Udunda, though he was a dream. Not a mean bone in his body. Feed you chocolates till they came out your ears. Take you to dances, pictures, and everything. Only a messenger boy's wages, too." Barbie lifted her suitcase onto the bed and started unpacking. "Gee, Barbie, you don't talk much, do you?" "Enough. You go on. I'm listening." Edna stood leaning on the bed rail, noticing everything that Barbie took out of her suitcase, talking all the time. "That your night tie. Gee, you'll have to see the new one. I got egg yellow, no sleeves, and lace 6 inches wide on the hem. Kenny bought it for my birthday. He was the first I went with when I came here. Say, they're not your pants, are they? But they're bloomers. Do you wear bloomers? But gee, you're not old. You wouldn't be any older than me. I'm 22. Gee, Barbie, wait till you see what I got. Just like pink froth they are. That's what Harold said when he gave them to me, and they are too, of course. I've got 6 pairs altogether. I've got 2 nice frocks, too. Sunday best, I mean. Got 3 or 4 old everyday things. I'm not short of stockings if you ever want a pair. We're about the same length in the leg, but I think my feet would be smaller than yours. How about we change the record a bit? Barbie said with a smile to soften her nettled tone. Gee, sure, Barbie. I just thought you'd be interested, that's all. But if I'm boring you, I'll just shut up and go out and sit in my room and sit there with nobody to talk to, and maybe I'll cry too if I feel like it. Barbie looked up. Her eyes went over the soft line of the young girl's face, the nose that was too big, and the lips that were too thin, the stocky neck, the hurt expression, the dark, reproachful eyes. Sympathy and understanding melted Barbie's features. I'm sorry, Edna, if I offended you. You talk as much as you want to. Edna brightened magically. Her smile was quick and ready, and her most attractive possession. No, I suppose people do get tired of hearing about the same thing all the time. I can talk about plenty of things. I don't have to talk about only one. I had a boy named Frank, and he used to talk about the one thing all the time. He used to talk about all the girls he knew. There was nothing they wouldn't do for him, he said. They'd do just everything, even wrong things, and he'd tell me all about how pretty they were and how nice they talked and everything like that. And what about your people, Edna? Where are they? They're dead long ago. Well, this boy Frank, I just got sick and tired. You mean you've got no one? For a moment, Barbie thought that she might have found a kindred soul. Oh, gee, yes, I've got aunts and uncles all over the place, and cousins, but I don't know where they are, except my daffy old Aunt Maud in Udonda, who brought me up. She could read teacups and make tables rap and see into the future, you know. Anyway, as I was saying, did you skip out? Heavens no, she told me to go. She went on like a lunatic. She didn't want me seeing boys. She didn't want me to go out even. It suited me to go. Gee, Barbie, you know, I never got anything until I started working. And going out with boys, they're fun. But the next one I get is going to be real hand-picked. I'm not rushing. I'm taking my time. I've got 2 now, and they'll do until I see what I want. Sure, Barbie said absently. I'm sure you'll be able to pick just the one. She was eyeing herself in the mirror, deciding she needed a bath and her hair washed. Edna's voice trilled with excitement. Oh, gee, Barbie, there's a man named Fascinatin' here, and boy, is he something. If only I could have him for a steady, I wouldn't call the king my uncle. You should see him. Barbie had turned as soon as she heard the name, and was looking at Edna and her act of glorification with unconcealed interest. "Gee, he'd be the one for me," Edna said raptly. Then she pouted wistfully. "But he doesn't even know I exist. Not even when I'm right under his nose." She suddenly brightened again. "Except once, down in the yard, when I was pegging out the washing. I had both arms up, see? And he came past and put his big hands around my waist and squeezed. 'Gee,' I said, 'you wouldn't take advantage of a defenseless woman, would you?' 'The day you're defenseless, sister,' he said, 'that's the day me and the big feller are waiting for.' That's what he said, and he went away with a little laugh. Oh, gee, it was nice." She went from smiling to frowning. "But what big feller? That's one bit I didn't get." Barbie did. "How mad," she said. "He lives here, does he, Edna?" Edna nodded. "When he's here he comes and goes. He's got the cubby." "What's the cubby?" "Oh, it's a little shed down the backyard. Everyone calls it the cubby." "Why is he in there?" "Well, when he's here he sort of works for old Rosy-Face, chopping wood and chucking out and a few jobs like that. You know, it's where he stays. When he goes, it's locked up until he comes again." "When is he coming again?" "Oh, he's here now," Edna cried. "He came in last night. Gee, I didn't finish telling you about Frank, did I?" "Well, some other time, eh?" Barbie interrupted. "I want to have a wash and change my clothes now." "Okay," Edna said cheerfully. "See you when we eat." Barbie saw Jack Kippelaw, the man they called Fascinatin', twice before she met him. It was the next morning. The window of her room looked down into the sunny yard. She happened to glance out and see this tall, powerful figure idly stroll out of the shade, followed by a ginger cat, swinging along with the motion of a professional runner. He strolled into the sunshine and stood there quietly eating fish and chips. The cat meowed around his legs, brushing and thumping itself against them. Casually, the man threw down a chip. The cat gave it a glance and a sniff and looked up mournfully, as much to say, "What happened to the fish?" "Eat that and be thankful," the man said, lazily moving the chip under the cat's nose with his boot. "Where's the fish?" cried the cat. "You waster of a cat," the man said. "I could have put that chip away myself. Too well fed, that's what's wrong with you." Fish looked at the cat, blinking. The man took the last bit of fish he had, tore it into halves, and threw one bit down. "Take it then, you guts, and I hope you get a bone in your throat." The cat snapped and ran. The man stood there, sunning himself and quietly eating. Barbie stared, compelled. He was dressed in nondescript clothing, dungaree trousers, gray drill shirt, and a wide-awake hat, the sides of the brim slightly rolled as though by stroking hands, and meeting in a peak at the front. But it was his size, his tallness, his build. He looked like a wall of iron from head to toe. There was no mistaking who he was, and Barbie was annoyed with herself for being so unwillingly impressed. The next time she saw him was when she was polishing the floor of the entrance hall. He was outside on the footpath, leaning against a veranda post and idly picking his teeth. He straightened. A shadow fell across him. The heavily built man who had come across the road stood in front of him, and gave a guilty smile of greeting. "What do you know, Foss?" "What do I know?" the man called Fascinatin' said. "Well, I know crap from clay, pal, and you're not clay." The man was taken aback. "What's digging you?" he blustered. "Nothing, only a bastard whose shadow even stinks." The man was frightened, but some pride made him say, "You know what you can do then." He started to saunter away, slowly, for others outside the pub were watching. The voice behind him said, "What price the yellow streak down your back?" The word was rapped out, "Rigby." Rigby stopped in the middle of the road, hesitated a moment, then turned around. Fear and enraged pride wrestled on his face. "Now you show your big yellow belly." Rigby stood still, glaring, goaded to answer the challenge, frightened to accept it. "Get your coat off, Rigby. Put your hands up." For one moment, the sightseers, including Barbie, thought Rigby, that bull of a man, would charge, but he didn't. He saw the other step casually off the curb and walk slowly toward him. "Don't be silly," he said, fear victorious, backing away. He turned quickly and ran. The man, called Fascinatin', strolled back to the curb. Two split-spitlers, hurried up to him, chuckling. "Wouldn't have been 2 hits in it, anyway, Fass." "Yes, there would have," gagged the other. "Fass would have hit him, and he would have hit the ground." "Yeah, that's right, Charlie." They laughed. "What did he do to you, Fass? What did you have on him?" "He knocked over my beer." "Now you know." They looked blank, then understood it was none of their business. "Aw, sure, Fass, sure." They melted away, disappointed. Barbie went on polishing the linoleum. "I like your pens," he said, before she saw him behind her. She looked around quickly. He was standing in the doorway. "I can't say the same for yours," she said, and went on polishing. The quick sight of his face stayed with her, and she found herself wanting to see more of it, and for longer. "Fass, come here, where are you?" The voice was full of plaintive anger. "Where the hell are you, Fass?" Okay, don't have a baby, I'm coming." He went through the door marked bar and almost crashed into Tweety, hooting and fuming. "Fass, they've put honey on Chloe's blossom again. Look, strike me fat, I could spit tacks. This desecration is driving me mad." There were 4 or 5 oil paintings on the walls of the barroom, and Chloe was one of them. She was a pink, obese, though shapely nude, sulkily reclining on hip and elbow, with one undulant arm supporting her head. She looked down archly upon the drinkers around the horseshoe-shaped bar. She might have been painted by Rubens, but she wasn't. Tweety had given her the name. "Look, isn't that terrible?" he bellowed, waving at the black clot of flies. "Looks natural anyway, I think." Fascinatin' was amused. "I don't care a tinker's what you think," bawled Tweety. "I like it the way the painter painted it. These barbarians, I don't know, they've just got no respect. Would they do it to their own wives?" he demanded. "Don't think they'd have to." "Well, I'm sick to death of it. It upsets me for days. It must have been the 10th or 12th time it had happened." Tweety had shifted the painting all around the wall. He had even placed it on the upper wall to foil the mutilators. But even though a ladder was needed, somebody managed to get Chloe and apply the honey. And honey wasn't the only defacing agent. Gobs of chewing gum were stuck on the breasts like nipples of putty. Chloe used to have a mate called Isidore. They could have been twins. The only difference was that Isidora's wealth of posterior faced the audience. It was soon labeled the Valley of the Moon, and Isidora's particular form of suffering was darts. Darts appeared so frequently in the valley that Tweety, in apoplectic defeat, took the picture down. "I'll hang her in the dining room with Isidora. That's what I'll do. Give these junket heads in there something nice to look at, and they don't appreciate it. Well, they'll be sorry when she's gone, I'll tell you that. You get that muck off her for me fast and take her down. And if you catch the culprit that did that, I want you to take it out of his hide. Who's the new drop of syrup, Rosie, out there in the hall?" "Don't talk to me about drops of syrup," bleated Tweety. "Don't you think I've got enough on my bloody mind with this honey business?" The words bounced out of him as he joggled off. "Why, I've got to pay a penalty like this just because I'm a decent, cultured art lover. I'll never know. Damn and blast the Philistines." Barbie was determined to talk to Fascinatin' as soon as possible for two reasons. One was because she wanted to see him, and the other because she had to. The hard, unfavorable impression she had formed of him at the Sheltons, and from what Edna said blended into a strong feeling against him, but the impression she had formed after seeing him conflicted with the other. She was confused. She didn't want to give way to either. She wanted to be hostile to him, but she didn't know whether she honestly had the right to be. The opportunity came in the afternoon. She saw him go into his hut, the cubby in the backyard. She knocked on the door. "Yeah," said a voice that meant, "Come in." She opened the door. He was stretched out on his back on the single bed, his hands behind his head. Only his eyes showed any sign of greeting, widening the slits into orbs and returning to slits again. A little smile played around his lips. Barbie had decided on the attitude she would take. She had decided she would be deliberately cold and uninterested. But now, face to face with him, she felt her resolve weaken and her breath quicken. He was compelling. The face and head a sculptor took a hunk of coffee-colored rock and chiseled the shape, roughly hewing lineaments and lines. The chisel slipped and gouged the flesh here and there. The bottom lip cast a shadow. The upper was a line. He had black curly hair, like Jack Dempsey's, tangled eyelashes, a broken nose, and a pair of remarkable eyes. They were different colors, one carnelian brown and the other sapphire blue, both vitally alive, the pupils dark and velvety, and his body looked even more massive lying there. "Just about to have a bit of a snore-off," he said in his calm, drawling voice. "Join me?" Barbie forced herself to take up the cold, remote attitude. "I just want a word with you. It won't take long." "Serious?" "Very." Shut the door, he smiled gently. No thanks, I like fresh air. He shrugged. Sit down. I'm right, Barbie told him. She watched him turn on his side, take tobacco and papers from the table beside him, and rolled a cigarette. His quiet, amiable manner only seemed to emphasize the formidable strength and power in him. She was most unsure of herself, but she was determined to show him that she wasn't impressed by him, for that, she believed, was what he was used to, and what he expected. She burst out, "Listen, are you a man?" He seemed to find the remark amusing. He chuckled. "Try me and see." "If you were a man," Barbie said, "you wouldn't be lying there taking it easy. You'd be doing something about helping your brother. You'd be out there giving him and his wife a hand to run that God-forsaken farm they've got." Smoke wreathed his face. "You flying off the handle about something?" he inquired disarmingly. Barbie wasn't abashed by his indifference. She was inflamed by it. "You bet I am. Don't you know what's going on out there? They're doing a starve. She's a nervous wreck. Ethel, your own brother is half in the rats with worry and anxiety. Unless something's done, he'll end up in the giggle house. And that'll finish her. They need help badly, and hell, and Tommy, you're big enough and strong enough and ugly enough to give it to them." He surveyed her calmly through the cigarette smoke. "You're pressing with a cold iron, sis." She wished he would blow up. There was so much menace in his very calmness that it unsettled her. But she went on, "I don't know how you can be so callous. He even offers you a half share, and you turn it down. I know all about that." "For nothing it was. Too hard, you said, too much work." "Too hard," she repeated scornfully. And yet, you're supposed to be the man it takes for policemen to lumber off to jail." "Only when I'm not trying," he smiled. Barbie's lips tightened with exasperation. "You're no hoper, that's all you are. Oh, I wish you could see Ethel Shelton. I just wish you could see her." "Good woman," he said. "Talks good too. Good schooling. A fat lot of use that is to her when she's dealing with a mental case. And that's what your brother is. I wish you could see him too. No guts, unrebloody liable. Guts, that's just what he has got. You surprise me. Been throwing in the sponge all his life." "And that's just what he's woken up to," Barbie retorted. "He'll be damned if he'll sky it any more. And it's harder for him to say that and to stick to it than it would be for another with twice his strength of purpose. And that's why I say he's got guts." Fascinatin stubbed his cigarette. He swung his legs off the bed and sat up looking at his huge disfigured hands as though he was proud of them. "Tell you something," he said. Barbie looked at him, wanting to look, granting him silence gladly so that she could stare undistractedly. Her eyes roved all over him as he spoke, dwelling on every feature. He said he had been pulling Frank Shelton out of the muck, off and on, ever since he could remember. like the time he pulled strings with a couple of blokes he knew to get Shelton the council job at Sugarbag Flat, like the time Shelton wanted to have a shot on the land, something he had always hankered after, and wrote down begging him to see what he could do. He reckoned it was his chance, because cockies were leaving their farms and selling out cheap. He'd tell you that. He told me nothing, Barbie said. Okay, so I hear about old Ned Egan, and I get him that farm dirt cheap. A good farm. Bit run down, but could be worked up with a bit of brains and a bit of toil. Old Ned was over 70, beyond him, but he got a living off it, just the same. Okay, Bloody Frank takes over, full of vinegar, but in no time messes up the whole damn lot. Notice something. What? No offers from the start, only when he's in the soup. Wants me to pull him out of the muck again, so I tell him the truth. Too hard, too much work. I don't want to be in it. I won't be in it. Same with anything. See it a bit my way now. Barbie didn't answer. He rolled another cigarette, lit it, and spoke with a mouthful of smoke. As for helping now, why? Did I ask him to take up the farm? Am I screwing his arm up his back, making him stay there? Is it my fault if he wants to turn a mistake into a complete failure? But you don't understand, Barbie began. Listen, these cockies, they're sitting shots for everything that comes along. Fires, floods, drought, flies, disease, everything has a go at 'em. They get knocked down, and they get up and get knocked down again. They cop it all the time, but they take it, and they take it because they're born and bred to it, like a vocation. Frank's not one of them. He's no farmer. He's just a chump having a smack at it, but he should have known all that, what he was up against, before he started. Well, he didn't know, snapped Barbie, and to say he should have doesn't fix things now. He's in trouble, and you can help him, but you won't. I don't know what to say to you. I think you're a... He had stretched out on the bed again, his arms behind his head. A smile played around his lips. What are you doing tonight? He said. Bastard, finished Barbie, turning on her heel. My mother doesn't think so, he called after her, and she heard him laughing softly. She thought she could have killed him. She had another turn-in with him that evening, when she was getting ready to go out with the lovely brusher. He stepped into her room, locked the door, and stood against it, arms folded and smiling. Barbie glared at him. Unlock that door this minute. What'll you do if I don't? Scream? I won't scream, she told him. You will. Somehow she didn't fear him. She knew he wouldn't hurt her. He wouldn't touch her unless she let him think he should. Some men are like that, she told herself, and some women. The men go on, and the women liked to be cowed, so there is an excuse for consent. For a moment she thought she was wrong as he slouched a few steps toward her. You'll be sorry, I tell you, she said. I'll bring you down to my size and weight. I'll get you sometime. It might be finished for you in a few minutes, but it won't be. I'll get you next week or next year, but I'll get you. He laughed suddenly. It was a good hearty laugh, as though he was greatly amused. You'll do me, he said. He tossed her the key. She thought of going straight over, replacing it in the lock, and opening the door, but she didn't want to see him go. Perversely, she said, There's one thing you've got to get straight. They might call you fascinatin', but you don't fascinate me." "Why?" he drawled. "Something wrong with you." She didn't answer. She was before the mirror, putting on rouge and lipstick she had borrowed from Edna. "Know why they call me fascinatin'?" he asked. "No interest to me. People can't take their eyes off me. The face part, it's my beautiful two-colored eyes." "Really," she gibed, "which one do you see out of? And I suppose you can swap them around." He was unruffled. "Not a bad couple of peepers you've got yourself, looking at 'em today. Color of butterscotch, I reckon. Hair to match, or near enough. Yours, well, it's not my grandmother's." He laughed. "I mean, real, is it?" She turned from the mirror, looking at him to be admired, but she was disappointed. He peered with an expression of distaste. "What in hell's name have you done to yourself?" "What do you mean?" He walked over to her and looked down unbelievingly on to her face. She gazed up, blushing and bewildered. "Fan-bloody-tastic!" he exclaimed. She began to understand. Her eyes sparkled. "I've had just about enough of you." She fiddled with the key, trying to get it into the lock, thrusting frantically. "I've never met anybody who was such an aggravation." "What do you want to go spoiling your bloody pan like that for, with that muck? Take it off. Looks terrible." She swung the door open. "Get out quick." He chuckled. "Funny, isn't it? All you want to do is slap me down, and all I want to do is kiss you on the rosebud lips, etc. Will you go?" She was boiling, scarlet with paint and humiliation. He lingered a moment on the threshold, looking at her. He shook his head. "Definitely terrible." She slammed the door with such force that he had to jump clear. Vexatiously she looked in the mirror, and she saw now that she and the face were strangers. The mouth was too red. The cheeks were too highly colored. She looked painted. Like a clown, she thought. Why does it look terrible on me? Other women it doesn't. Maybe I can't wear it. But he didn't have to tell me. And he didn't have to tell me like that. I'm a woman. Why can't I wear it? Silly-looking thing, she thought. Can't do anything like a woman. Can't even put that stuff on right, to suit. There's a right way, and even some men know it, for they advise women. They make it for women. She started to wipe it all off. The lovely brusher knocked and came in. He grinned at her. "I could kick your shins," she told him. "Me? Gord, what have I done?" As they passed down the back stairs, Fascinatin, leaning on the rail in the shadows, commented quietly, "No accounting for some tastes, is there?" He added, "You say something, brusher." "Not me, Faz. Not a peep. Think I want me ruddy head knocked off. Show her a good time, or it might be, for being steamed up by this new man in her life, and thinking about him." Barbie Casabon hardly knew what the picture was about. Brusher took her to the Greeks for what he called a supper of ham and eggs. He gave her his itinerary, in case, he said, she fell by the wayside and needed a good apothecary. He brought her home and said he was off to take it out of the blankets, as he was leaving early in the morning. There was a light in the cubby and a lot of noisy singing, cooped up in there and spilling outside. Barbie stood in the darkness of the back veranda, listening. One man and a chorus were singing, all off key and stumbling over one another. They put a basin on his head and cut his lovely hair, cut his lovely hair, cut his lovely hair, till there was nothing there. You should have heard him swear, below the top I'm bare, I've got no hair to tear. That so-and-so from Omeo has spoilt my lovely hair, spoilt, spoilt, spoilt my lovely hair. Amid the babble, Barbie found herself straining to catch the sound of a woman's voice. She couldn't hear any, but she was compelled to go and see. She stood in the yard, close to the hut, but in the shadows. You could drive a team of horses through it. Have a go at the legs on her, I said. Aw, dry up. Look out, don't do that. Fascinatin'll go crook. Get off your ruddy goat. Righto, mate, take it away. Wait a bit, I'm getting ahead of my start. Let her go. Wait till I eat my bird seed. There must have been half a dozen men in there. Through the dirty window, with its dirty curtain, she could only make out dim shapes in a pool of blue fog. She didn't want to go any nearer the pane. Somebody might come out any minute. She felt satisfied there were no women in the company. She went to her room and got into bed, full of thought. A man's voice reached her, a powerful, clear, ringing tenor. He was singing a song that took her back to a time when her father dandled her on his knee and sang it to her. She remembered a drover in a salmon shirt on a chocolate horse singing it one evening by Goiter's Lagoon. There was another man at Charlotte Waters, sitting in the moonlight, half soling his boots, and singing to 5 pickaninnies. I'm homing with 1,000 head, from Birdsville to Marie. The Southern Cross above my bed knows where I long to be. Call me when the cross turns over, way up where the planets roam. One watch more is one watch fewer, one more campfire nearer home, one more daybreak, one more sunset, one turn more, you Milky Way. There'll be waiting love and kisses, warm white arms that bid me stay. The pointers rise like Bunyip's eyes from Birdsville to Marie. They chase the cross around the skies and bring my love to me. Long after the party finished, Barbie went on thinking. She thought of the song and all the pictures it brought to her, and she remembered vividly a time in the floods when she was 12. In a town of water, a man died who was a drover. The mourners stood on the dry land as the coffin was placed in a boat to be rowed across to the cemetery. 2 men took the oars. As they pulled away, the chief mourners got into a second boat, but they had not moved before the first boat capsized, and the coffin swirled away on the water like a log. One of the men swam ashore and jumped on his horse. He galloped alongside. The coffin rolled and dashed into the bank, swung away, but was caught in a snag. The man splashed down, dragging the pony after him. He knotted the bridle through one of the handles and urged his horse back. The coffin slid through the ooze and lay on the bank. The watchers came up. Gray, the rescuer, like a plastered rat, thin and shivering, his hair hanging like seaweed, glared at the coffin. No different, dead or alive. Trouble-making bastard always was. But the distraught wife didn't think so, and she could not face that funeral. But Resurrection Jim was there to comfort her. She stood looking numbly across the water, amid the respectful, silent group, and where men will say little apples will grow again. The darkest cloud has a silver lining, and God knows best. Resurrection Jim said this to her. You know what the drovers say. Miss Anderson, call me when the cross turns over, they say. The cross turns over for everybody. It marks, for some, the end of a sleep, for some the beginning. One more campfire nearer home. Home can be anything you want to make it. The birth of a child, the end of the road, the taking of a wife or husband. You have things to do. Do them. You have children to love. Love them. You have peace and pleasure to come. Go toward them. As the cross turned for Jacko, so will it turn for you, and end your day of sorrow. The taking of a husband, the phrase lingered in Barbie's mind, wholly occupied it. She realized then why her memory had plucked out that incident, not because of the burial of a stranger and the grief of a nobody, but because Resurrection Jim had figured in it, and because of the words he had spoken, because of that phrase so associated with the thoughts she had and wanted to have of a fathomless man with bicolored eyes. She had to work him out. She sat up in the bed, systematically analyzing him and her relationship to him. He seemed so impenetrable, so unassailable, so bent on a way of life, and so sure that everything he said and did was right, if not right in itself, right for him. He shone like a bonfire. He stood like a pillar, warmth and strength that she wanted around her against the feeling of loneness that had come with the death of her father and the loss of his love and affection. She considered him for these things, and she was aware, too, quite clinically, of the first and surprising awakening of physical desire in herself. But is he good for me, she thought, or is he bad for me, or no good at all? That's what has to be decided. If he is good for me, then I shouldn't waste any time messing about. Somebody else might get him. In fact, it's queer why some woman hasn't snatched him up long ago. Maybe they tried. And he doesn't believe in tying himself up. But that doesn't matter. I'd better think about it, though. And if he is bad for me, or no good, well, no harm done, and the sooner I clear him out of my mind, the better. Be sorry, though, she whispered. I won't let him get me mad any more. That's one thing, she thought, and I'll find out more about him. I'd better not be too unfriendly either. Keep the pot simmering. In the morning, when she was beating the dust out of a rug thrown over the clothesline, he crept up behind her and pinched her. If it's your dear one, he announced. Oh, hello, she said offhandedly, grimacing at the tingling buttock. You know, last night you had me bluffed. I didn't know what to do. Yes, you did, she said virtuously, more to show him that there were no hard feelings than anything else. And it was the right thing. She went around the other side of the carpet. He pulled the line down and looked over. Can I sleep with you tonight? Certainly not. Tomorrow night? No. Booked up, eh? He hesitated only a moment. If I marry you, can I sleep with you? No, she snapped impetuously. Hell, he drawled with a moan. You're too tough for words. She wanted to correct the remark, point out that it was a slip of the tongue, but she realized in the same instant how foolish it would sound. Confused, she burst out unintentionally, "There's plenty of trollops you can sleep with. Go and get them." "Get them?" His eyebrows lifted. "I brushed them off. I've got a waiting list." He smiled. "Any time you want to go down at the top, just say the word. That'll be the day. Even X the lot out and give you the whole blank page to yourself, if that'd make you happy." She took the rug off the line and threw over another one. She looked at him briefly. His face was unsmiling, even questioning, she thought. Then the playful smile came around the lips and spoiled for her the illusion of sincerity. He turned to go. "Aren't you ever serious?" she criticized. "All the time, Barbie," he said, strolling away. "All the time." She looked after him, wondering, conscious of a feeling of pleasure that he had known her name and called her by it. She didn't see him for 5 days after that. The news of his going depressed her. His absence filled her with longing and restlessness. Even if he had said goodbye, she would have felt better, she thought. She felt she was just another girl to him, and she didn't want to be just that. Yet good sense told her she must find out what was in him for her. The same evening, Barbie decided to go for a walk around the town. She wanted to post a letter she had written to Ethel Shelton. She told Ethel all about her new job and how she wouldn't believe it, but her own brother-in-law himself turned out to be staying at the Marquis of Lorne, too, and how she had met him, and how he seemed to be just as she had said. Barbie said nothing about explaining the Sheltons' plight to Fascinatin', nor about telling him what she thought of him. As she passed along the back veranda, Edna hissed and called her. Barbie went into her room. Edna was fixing on an earring, a little yellow bird cage with a little green parrot on a bar inside. She was happy and excited. "Oh, Barbie, room 2 is taking me out. Look what he gave me. Aren't they gorgeous?" "They suit you too," Barbie said in admiration. "They're so quaint," she laughed. "Where on earth would he get those in this town?" "Oh, Barbie, they come all the way from Sydney. There's nothing like them around here, or anywhere else in the bush." "Oh, Barbie, he's a dream. Have you seen him?" Barbie only had time to shake her head. "So neat and well dressed, all the latest. He's a jockey, you know. He said he's ridden lots of winners, and he said I was a winner." She laughed. "Don't you think that's nice? And oh, that's only one compliment. He's full of them. And funny sayings. He makes you laugh. He likes my chest," he said. "It's so nice and flat. He doesn't like girls with big bosoms. Full, you know, like yours. They don't need all that extra poundage, he says. It does them no good. He's all for getting rid of surplus weight. When you're a jockey, he says, you've got to sweat and give away everything. And he does that, but he can be big, he says, at a moment's notice." She paused for breath. "I was glad to hear him say that about the chest, though, because I've always had a worry about building mine up a bit." Barbie shook her head, smiling in tribute. "You're sudden death, all right." Edna preened with delight. I only met him this morning. And he only came last night. Oh, Barbie, look, have you noticed how I've sort of been leaving my mouth open between words? Look, like this. I'll say something and do it. Watch. I love jockeys, see? Yes, Barbie said, puzzled. What's that for? He says it gives you sex allure. Does it? Hell and Tommy, how would I know? All the girls in Sydney do it, he says, and it sets them off. In fact, he says, if they don't do it, they're crumbs and the boys won't look at them. Oh, he says such funny things. He says he's got money to burn. I don't mean that's funny. When I first asked him what did he do for a living, he said as little as possible, she laughed. And he calls people desert heads and things he doesn't like stink bombs. Oh, and a funny joke he told me. Two men were looking at the writing on a Jewish tombstone. One said, "Can you read that?" The other said, "No, but if I had my fiddle I could play it." She shrieked, "Don't you think that's funny? What's his name?" "Perce. That's all I call him." "That's all you want, just one thing. It would be my rotten luck. He's got to go back to Sydney, otherwise he'd be my new steady. He's only here for a few days, then he goes out to his brother's place at Penape. You know the place. Nobody's home there now. He'll spend the rest of his holiday there. I don't know how it'll be when he goes. I'll feel like dying, I know, but I'll see when it happens." Barbie said she must be going. Edna asked her to wait a few minutes, and she would be with her. She just had to meet Perce. "Oh, gee, here I am talking all about my affairs, and not even asking you how you're getting on with Fascinatin' or anything." "Getting on with him? Oh, Barbie, I saw you talking to him in the yard this morning. Gee, I could have cried with envy. Don't you think he's super?" Barbie shrugged indifferently. So. Last night in the kitchen after you went out with that funny gink with the lizard, he was asking Cookie Rushborn all about you, what your name was and where you come from and everything. And Cookie, she's been with old Rosy Face for 10 years, you know, and knows everything. She told him, and she said, we didn't need you, but that Brusher man talked old Rosie into giving you the job, because you were out of chips, and your father pegged out, and all that. Gee, Barbie, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Helen Tommy, Barbie cried. What do they think I am? A lame duck? Old Rosy Face can have his job, and I'll tell him that right away. Edna stared in horror. Gee, Barbie, no, you can't do that, she yelped. It'll put me in, and I'll get the bullet. Either I'm needed or I'm not, Barbie said. I won't take money for nothing. Barbie, you're going to spoil my evening. Gee, I shouldn't talk so much. I don't want to get the sack. She turned away. There were fake tears in her voice. I love it here. I love everybody. I've never been so happy. Gee, it would break my heart. I'd just go out and get run over. True, I would. She held a handkerchief to her nose. Barbie looked at her back view, the thin shoulders, the skinny legs, the ironing board flatness of the whole figure. She wasn't taken in. She asked the question uppermost in her mind, and she asked it with apparent unforgiving coolness. And what did he say and think? Who? Mr. Nosey himself. Fascinatin', you mean. Gee, Barbie, nothing. She turned around, looking sad. Not while I was there, anyway. You see, it was none of my business. I was just sort of coming and going when I heard what I told you. Well, Cookie Rushborn talks too damn much. She's got no right to blab about me to a stranger. Let her stick to her cooking and mind her business. She had no right to let me hear what she said. Edna tried to agree. She walked over and stood in front of Barbie. Her expression was melancholy and contrite. Let it pass this time, please, Barbie, and I'll never tell you anything else. She says, honest. Barbie had to smile in spite of herself. The smile bloomed into a laugh. I just don't know how I'm going to look into that man's eyes again, that's all. Gee, Barbie, how can you say that? Edna was all vivacity again. I could look into them for days. They're so unusual. You don't know which one got there first, do you? One's a claim jumper. I heard him say that himself. They suit him so much, I think. I had a boy in Uganda, had funny eyes. Barbie, not funny, but you know what I mean. They were golden, like drops of honey. Not brown, but truly golden. At last she was ready, and they went out. In the entrance hall waited Perce, a 6-stone man in a blue suit with a hooped tie, vaselined hair, and a little monkey face. He wore rings on his fingers, a flower in his lapel. Brief toe caps showed below his cuffs. He must have been 40. He had a push-button smile. It flicked on and off as Edna made the introduction and her eulogy. His bright eyes met Barbie's, and he felt like a pane of glass. They met Edna's, and he felt like the wall of China, so he looked at Edna. Barbie left him, feeling she had no right to tower over any man like that. She posted the letter and idled along the footpath, warm yet with the heat of the day. Brusher must have told the lot about her and her father, how they had been always together, the life they had. No matter, I suppose, she thought, but I don't want him feeling sorry for me, that's all. Then what makes me think he would? Why would he feel sorry for me when he doesn't feel sorry for even his own brother? He's not the feeling sorry for kind as far as you can make out. Need me? What do they mean they don't need me? I've got plenty to do. I'm earning my money, every penny of it. Strange name, when you come to think of it. Sort of unlikely, I thought when I first heard it, but it's not now. He is fascinating. He just is, no matter how much you want to stick a pin in him. And not so strange anyway, the name, when you think of others. Like that man, that Fettler at King Unya, up and down like a girder, with a little hat on his head. Piece of string he was known as, but only in reference. He was never addressed as that. It suited him fine. How about that? And how about that man called Rainglass and at Saduna? Rainglass Roberts, the weather prophet, who went by his bones, and old-fashioned club-shaped lemonade bottle filled with chemical and with a glass marble for a cork, clouds and plants and heat and cold as his instruments, Clement, Ragg, and Inigo Jones. They weren't in it with him, people said. And there was the woman with the big round anemic face they called Bladder of Lard. She ran a brothel in Perth. How about her? Barbie saw the man called Rigby leaning, talking to another against the frosted glass window of the billiard saloon. For some reason, a chill went through her. She didn't like the look of him. She went back to the hotel.